All right. We're in Proverbs 9. Proverbs 9. It's really interesting. It's kind of revisiting points we've already seen. And what's actually happening, as is often the case with the Bible, is these very set patterns of you have things like inclusios and so forth. This is kind of one of those patterned discourses. And it helps us summarize and once again explore and look from a different angle and be reminded of what we've already learned about wisdom and folly. Now, when we were together last time and learning about Proverbs, we considered the danger of the adulterous woman. And as I said there's this interesting thing Proverbs does where there's personification and there's also real life. So there is such a thing as having a wise bride. There are wise women that wise men should seek to espouse themselves to and get married to and make a future together. And exercise dominion together, right? In the image of God made he him, in the image of God made he them. And they can image God together in their relationship as husband and wife and their conjugal union. The other thing you see is such figure, and there's also adulteresses and adulterers. And you want to avoid that in real life. However, there's also the fact that wisdom is like a wise wife, a woman worthy to be pursued, engaged, and espoused. And Lady Folly is like the adulterous woman. And engaging in folly is like committing adultery. Very interesting dynamic that Solomon chooses. And what we're going to see in today's chapter isn't so much real life as the personification again. And he keeps going back and forth. When the Bible goes back and forth like this, it's not that the writers of the Bible are foolish or bad writers, or they patchwork quilted a bunch of things from authors that have no relationship to one another. I think it's one person really putting this together, and the switching back and forth is intentional. We're supposed to see the unity. We're supposed to see that our reality around us points to a big reality. Right? Does that make sense? These signs, these symbols carried out well, help us understand even greater realities that in many ways are otherwise invisible. Does that make sense? Right. If you want to have a healthy, be able to see the church well, the church in her relationship to Christ well, it always helps to have witnessed and carry on, if it's your vocation, a good marriage. How do I put this? We live in a time when the sacrament of marriage, the institution of marriage is being desecrated, right, on a massive scale. That actually has the danger of confusing, occluding, shadowing over, hiding, hurting people's ability to understand the relationship between Christ and His church. Because the husband and wife, a Christian husband and wife, have a great responsibility to image what is. The husband really is supposed to be Christ-like. The woman really is supposed to be church-like. And that's really, their stakes are high because people are watching. You're watching. You're engaging in it. And your children are. Same thing people have often said, young people raised in an abusive household where the father is abusive, the understanding of God the Father, how it's hard to come to terms with because it's been so polluted in their mind. I'm seeing this with regard to adultery and with regard to good marriage, with regard to folly, with regard to wisdom. Because you have people that don't see things aright where they don't think adultery is a big deal. They don't see the destruction and carnage of it. And so they don't think folly is a big deal either. Similarly, you have people who don't value the treasure that is a good marriage with wise people together, being flourishing together. And so they devalue wisdom. And they don't actually understand the outlines of what seeking and finding wisdom and applying wisdom looks like. Does that make sense? All right, I keep revisiting this over and over because this is what, have you noticed we're 9 chapters in and Solomon still hasn't hopped into the little zippy Proverbs yet. This is a long charge to his son, a long discourse. It's just a fascinating book as you get into it. Let's go to chapter 9, verses 1 through 12. Who can read that?
Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. She has sent out her maidens. She cries out from the highest places of the city. Whoever is simple, let him turn and hear. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Forsake foolishness and live, and go in the way of understanding. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself, and he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years of life will be added to you. If you are wise, you are wise for yourself, and if you scoff, you will bear it alone.
All right. Here we have wisdom, Lady Wisdom, and she has her hospitality. Can I put it that way? The hospitality of Lady Wisdom. And again, pursuing and getting wisdom is like wooing a spouse and carrying on a good, productive marriage. Mom or grandma is sending out the invitations to Christmas dinner. It's interesting how meals, you're going to see meals as a metaphor in this chapter. How do people committing adultery eat together versus people who are really married and carrying on a faithful marriage with a family? How do they eat together? Let's think about that. Let me break that down because Folly's going to have her stolen bread or her stolen water and her bread in secret already telling us how do people committing on and carrying on an affair, how do they eat together?
In secret.
In secret? Explain. Kind of put some up to date details on it. Flesh and bones. What would it look like? Delivery. Yeah. To go out of town at a fancy restaurant. Hope nobody from hometown is there. So it all has to be furtive. Has to be on the sly. Hope nobody else comes. It's isolating, really. You're not being a part of the wider community. You have to be furtive. Often maybe wasteful. It's not very productive necessarily, It's just silly and it's just not. You don't think of having something like an Easter dinner or a Christmas dinner, do you? No, with the kids coming together. What's going to happen? What is this, the days of our lives? Or as the world turns, right? Bringing her here, all that, right? That's not how you carry on. Who does carry on like that? Married people. Married people have that. You think about Thanksgiving dinner. You think about the joy and the love that's enjoyed there. And that's what Lady Wisdom's doing. It's very open. It's very much, we're here, and she sends off people to this. It's nothing shameful. It's nothing shameful. What does God say about the marriage bed? It's undefiled. Nothing dirty and shameful is happening here. Same thing with wisdom and folly. How they interact is very similar to these dynamics. This is just so interesting. Solomon sees it this way. We need to see it this way too. It's creational. Lady Wisdom is creational. She's creative. She builds. She hews out a very durable house. Hewing out. What do you think of? What's the imagery there? I'm just using the English translation. But I mean, you think about what's hewing out.
Well, it's maybe good. Yeah, start off.
Lumberjack. Who else?
It takes effort.
Takes effort. Masonry. Ooh, okay. I almost think of it as like you're not building it, you're carving it into something. If I can hop into my classics, Odysseus took a tree stump that was already within his house. He built his house around it, and didn't he build the bed out of it? Like literally the roots are there. Nobody else knows. It's just him and his wife, and that's how he proves to his wife he's her husband. Because he didn't move anything. It was there, rooted into the earth, and he hewed it out. That's how immovable it is. You're not getting a mover, right? Same thing, if you were to hew out a cave or a mine or stone, it's not even hauling bricks in. It's not masonry. It's just, it's not moving anywhere. Engraving, yeah. I mean, you could do this understanding of when you quarry or when you do lumberjacking, you hew out things. But you think, I grew up in a logging town, not too far from mining country. My grandfather and grandfather all worked at quarries in Maryland, northern Maryland. I feel like I've had some contact with hewing out things, even things that are carried on trucks out. My great-grandfather thought he built the Pretty Boy Dam as far as he was concerned, the reservoir to Baltimore. He thought he built the Chrysler Building because it was his rock. That was his, right? He had this understanding of it's substantial. My grandfather worked as a machinist on the dump trucks that carried the rock. Why? Because they had to be, have you seen quarry dump trucks? Especially when the technology is coming out. My great-grandfather, it was mules. Take a mule over an ox or a horse any day. But then as time went on, you could do bigger things with bigger, the trucks are enormous, to hew out a hunk of stone and move it. Wow. It's substantial. I grew up in the logging town, so I see these huge, you see the timber, you see the scrappy ones, like, ugh. But you see the nice ones, the huge things. It's just, how many, you have to be careful. My dad was a forester, so it's like, you just had to have so much safety measures in the enormous equipment. Skidders, knuckle boom loaders, massive. It's substantial. It's heavy. It takes work. It takes skill. It takes caution. It takes craftsmanship. It takes strength. It takes determined effort. Both the discipline to learn to deal with it and to deal with it itself. You're not in a hurry with this stuff. You can't be. Actually, the logging trucks work. I remember the Jake brakes going down Hot Springs Mountain. Right, that was my childhood. Yeah, they still do it. Right, and I go in there, it's like, that or the trains crashing into each other in the woodyard. That's, I'm home. But the idea of what is it? This is what building a house is like, including a family. Little by little, very intentional effort, hard work. Things happen. We got a 9-month-old teething, probably waking up at 3 o'clock, past 3 of the 4 nights, right? It's split. Don't want to do it, but you do it, right? You keep applying yourself, you keep hewing away. It's the same thing with your life, right? If you really want to make a change, you have to make the plans, you have to apply the habits, and you have to actually commit to it substantially. Like, I want to lose weight. And you just say, I want to lose weight, and I want to lose weight. And then there's the 20th, right? You have to make something substantial, committed, disciplined. Wisdom's like that. Wisdom's like that. Yes, ma'am.
Please go ahead. It's like saying, I want to be a Christian, and then just sit down.
You have to sit down.
I don't have anything to do at all.
Yeah, good.
The 7 pillars.
Yes.
7 virtues.
Okay. Yes. Well, can I actually skip ahead? Yes. So, let's talk about, there's 7 pillars. Pillars. This is a substantial thing, right? If you need pillars, you need some weight support, right? This is really important. This is what everything's hanging on. And it's interesting, what do they represent? And if you read the Church Fathers, if you read the medieval commentators, and if you read the Reformation commentators, there's all sorts of interpretations of what this could mean. What are the 7 pillars? And one of the common ones you'll find is these are the 7 virtues. Faith, hope, love, the theological virtues, and then courage, justice, temperance, and prudence, the cardinal virtues. And that's very common. The life of virtue, upholding it. Those virtues, if you follow through on those, you're sustaining something very heavy. The good life. And that would be a common way you find. You can also think about, are they people, figures? Is it found? It's obviously found in Christ. And you find lots of what we could call allegorical readings. That's a common one, would be the 7 virtues, because wisdom, is moral. It's excellence, human excellence. So it's very similar to how we talk about virtue, but it's Eastern too, right? It's Hebrew. It's not the Hellenistic necessarily. How much communication was going between those two worlds is still something we're finding out more about, but it is something to consider that this is Hebrew. This isn't, Plato or Aristotle either. But it's something that is really interesting when our forebears, our forefathers of the faith, as they read the Bible, they're like, oh, what could that be? And how does, and then they're thinking, how does it function? How does a pillar function? Right, connecting heaven and earth. Something would come crashing down on you if the pillar isn't there or if it fails. Right? You need all of them there. And they're supporting something. And that, whatever it is, that's what I want you to see. And so, and also the 7 is important because it's the mark of completion. Right? In terms of the Bible, 7 days of creation. It's creational. Right? It's Genesis. Think in terms of Bible specs first. Before we hop into, I do the same thing. Oh, virtues, right? Classical, medieval sort of thing. But, that is a Christian reflection. Does that help? I mean, you think about, I just want you to paint the image in your head. The other thing she's doing, she has plenteousness. She has nourishment. She has conviviality. Can I put it that way? I'm at the point in my life where it's like, oh, I have to go to grandma's. I have to eat food. I just want to show up for presents. Right? And maybe some shrimp cocktail when you're a kid. But when you're older, you really start, if you go to like a dinner party with other grown-ups, and boy, isn't that fun? And when you get to be a parent, when you're in college even, when you're in high school, you just really look forward to being together, right? Because you've matured.
You go for the camaraderie?
Yeah,
Rather than the food?
And it's and feasting isn't just about stuffing your face. It's the practice of joy. Like I said, I ended the sermon with, you need to mark it with feasting. You need to mark the resurrection of Christ. That's actually what this is, right? It's a feast. Rejoicing in the salvation accomplished by Jesus Christ for us, in His death and resurrection, and feasting. Joy, happiness, right? A feast versus a fast. Hooray. And she also, so she has that. She's not wanting for, she's not like, we can't have a ham this time, we're too poor. She, like the wise wife, has budgeted well, and she's made her, she's canned her beans and her pork loin and her everything. That's what my grandmother did. Everything gets canned or pickled or frozen. They had like the big brown 70s, hide how many bodies in the freezer, kind of freezer in the basement. I love that thing. It looked like a giant Lincoln or something. All I needed was the wood veneer. Anyway. Whenever I see one of those big old lead sleds, I'm like, I can smell that picture. So, anyway, what am I saying? Wisdom's like that. She thinks ahead. And when the time of dearth comes, she's not freaking out. She's not like, oh no, the sky's falling. It's like, yeah, the sky's falling, but I've made preparation for that. We'll manage. Tighten our belts a bit. And that's the kind of, this calm matriarch, really. And I hope you guys have some anchor points to have seen that in action. And hopefully you're at a point in your life, several of you, where you are that in your family. And it's very interesting. So she has plenty of food to put on. She has a good spread, and they're going to have a good time. And she sends out her maidens, her handmaidens, emissaries, messengers, issuing invitations. that's interesting to think about. What are those? And that's kind of like, are those the virtues too, maybe? You know, like, think, or are they subjects of study? Are they people that teach and invite us to wisdom? People in our lives, events in our lives, right? You get mugged by reality and you say, I'm going to say bye-bye to folly. I'm being invited to be wise. There's a lot there. There's a lot of allegorical takeaways. But what you need to see is wisdom sends out staff to invite you to the feast she's put on. And the wise person, even though they are in ignorance, somebody who is going to get wisdom, right? When the opportunity is presented, they're going to take the opportunity rather than continue on in folly and ignorance. They are looking for those kinds of invitations. I always am really pleased when you meet somebody who, when something bad happens and it's their own doing, or they had a part in what happened to them, they think about, how did I get here so I don't do that again? Or I've seen it work out in someone else's life, how do I do that? They're looking, can I say they're looking for the invitation, they're looking for the handmaiden to come and go to the mailbox, if I can put it that way. Wise people aren't preternaturally, instinctually pre-downloaded with wisdom. You don't come with the software package fully downloaded, all the updates, all the patches, and you turn on the Gateway 2000 and there it all is, it's ready to run. That was our first computer, the Gateway 2000. Showing my age there. But you guys are laughing at me. You're so good.
Yes.
Get the cow box, the Holstein. But what I'm saying is, you don't have much. You don't start with much in terms of what's pre-downloaded. However, the posture you have and the way you look at and approach the rest of life makes you receptive to when you get the opportunity for a download, so to speak. I hate to be using computer metaphors, but you just think of, there are those saying, nope, they hit the no button, don't download, right? They're just like, nope, no update. They don't ever restart the computer. They don't ever do the update, and then their computer crashes with a virus. How did I get here? Well, dummy, right? You didn't listen. You didn't accept the wisdom. You just embraced folly. That's what I want you to kind of see that. That's actually what Solomon's going to say in a second. Verse 9, he that reproveth a scorner giveth himself... Verse 8, reprove not a scorner lest he hate thee, rebuke a wise man, he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, he'll be yet wiser. Teach a just man, he will increase in learning. The wise person is the one that accepts the feedback, learns the lesson. He's eager to take it. You correct him. He doesn't begrudge you. You become his enemy for the rest of your life. If he gives you a hard truth, you thank him. The wise person is like, and sometimes it might take a while, especially a young person, right? Later on, thank you for keeping me from being a total idiot and whatever it would be. But that's what a wise person is their pride and their ego isn't such that they always take it personally and they will never learn.
A teachable spirit.
A teachable spirit. How many times, and I'm always thankful for the investment that others have made in my life to just like offer it, and then whenever I didn't take it, oh man, and then thankfully I was in a situation where it didn't totally ruin my life. On the other hand, you just learn, it's like, accept it. Or accept the rebuke if you can be teachable and not do that. And then also have the courage when those are trying to tempt you to folly, you can actually stand your ground pretty solid and say, no, I'm not doing that. That helps too. You can't just be so pliable that you'll never do anything. But what often happens, the man given to folly, when correction is offered to him like a pig, he'll trod the pearl into the mud. Pearls before swine is exactly the imagery I want you to see with the foolish man. Pearls, jewelry, treasury, highly valuable. Temper tantrum often. Not uncommon. Yeah.
And that's why he remains a fool.
Yeah, okay, you were offered something to at least not be a fool again, or not be a fool in the situation. And then sometimes they take it personally and they become the enemy of the wise person. Yeah.
It's very common nowadays.
It's always been common, I would argue. I think it's just part of the sinful human condition. There are so many examples. You read Plato, or not Plato, like a Thucydides or something. Somebody gives good counsel to a military leader, and like an idiot. The same thing you see in the Napoleonic Wars. Just reading some histories back and forth. You just find people that laugh good counsel in the face, and then they mess it up, and then they're still petulant about it and didn't learn a thing. And people, thankfully, sometimes people just have to follow them. Other points, if somebody's over them, it's like, you're off the job. That sort of thing. But yeah.
So that means the person doesn't have humility,
No, this is so fundamental. The pride is what's killing them. That's the hamstringing thing, is the pride. Humility. Wise people are humble. Did somebody have other things to say before I move on? Yeah.
Which is, with the handmaidens, could they also be her wisdom's vision of training the next generation?
Could be. Yeah,
Bringing a broader.
Yeah, and you have people also that are on their journey to greater wisdom, right? You can have somebody, you're in your 20s, and somebody in your 30s gives you a little nugget of wisdom from the past decade, right? And they're on their journey, and they kind of say, listen, this will help you, at least this right step right in front of you. Maybe that, but also, prepping the next generation. She doesn't have, well, she does have daughters, but think in those terms of somebody that's right. It's kind of mother-daughter sort of thing.
Like a mentoring type.
Yeah, the mentoring sort of thing too. That happens. So also, let's keep going to some of the details. Bread/meat and wine are on the menu. What does that imagery conjure up in our minds? It's sacramental. I'm always tired like this. It's Christological and sacramental. Wisdom is. Would you like to feed on wisdom incarnate? I would, right? We were actually kind of talking last week. I didn't put it in these words, and I should have. Christ is present in the word preached and the sacrament dispensed. And so we do not forbid little ones from coming to him. Right? If Christ is in the word preached and the sacrament dispensed and participated in, what did Jesus say about the little ones? Let them come to me. And we need to do that. Moving forward, there's an invitation or choice. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
And apology question.
Yes.
Verse 2, she has mixed her wine.
Mixed her wine. I don't want to say it's a cocktail, but that's a different. It is interesting we mix wine. It's not necessary to do that. It's mixing water and wine, showing the two natures of Christ in one cup. Also, water and wine coming from the side. So there is a mixed drink, so to speak. Also, in that, and so actually, I like that you see that because you can. You're allowed. It's a visual thing you're seeing and participating, drinking it, and you have a mixed drink. And the other thing, when you think of mixed drink, what do you think of? Conviviality. Spices, a spiced wine. She's mixed her wine. That's what it often means.
So would a household perhaps have its own mix?
Could be. Yeah, the old family recipe.
Yes.
Yeah, and you find these, right? Even in old church cookbooks, depending on the church. Right? But, the Episcopalian churches, you'll find this, mulled wine or the punch. Mary Jane, don't you know the churro punch recipe or whatever, right? I mean, things like this. She has this, right? It's a special occasion. Here's the vermouth or whatever, right? And in a sense, she probably had it from her own supply. You think about how expensive spices historically are. What a luxury item spices are, and then nice fine wine as well. It takes a lot of preparation and wealth to do that, and she has it. Why? Because wisdom is the gateway to earned prosperity. If things are going well and justly, yes.
And then the idea of temperance, because everybody drank wine, but she rarely drank unmixed wine.
Right, they often had water mixed with it as like a purify. Yeah, well, it was to purify the water because water was so bad back then, and everybody did it with beer too. But I think it's mostly in terms of conviviality, where it's a spiced sort of thing. You see this too. Actually, the adulterous women have a similar invitation. I've mixed it with myrrh, I think, or something. So this is, I'm thinking in terms of a luxury item, not so much a less than, but there is a sobriety. There's a sober enjoyment, right? I don't know if I should, but my wife has said, she's not really met an Anglican priest that doesn't drink, but she's also met one that's never gotten drunk. That makes sense. I'm sure there's exceptions, but in terms of like how we do things, yes.
It's also the effort that it takes to mix it just right.
Right.
Just like to hew
Experience.
out. It's effort. That's what gives it its value and preciousness.
Right.
This effort on behalf of others.
Yes.
I think you've made the preparation. You've thought through. She's not showing up on Christmas Day and she hasn't done anything. She's like, oh, make a run to the grocery store. Forgot this. And you've met people who are like that, and it's like a chicken with their head cut off. Wisdom's got it together, and that's what it does for our lives.
Preparation.
Yeah, foresight, preparation, vigilance. An invitation or choice is given to the young man. Forsake foolishness and live. Live. I put it all in capitalizations. Forsake your foolishness and live. Because folly leads to death. You see how folly is mixed in with sin and evil? Yeah, that's how it is. There's a moral slant to wisdom.
But the people of the generation today like to experience it first before they learn,
That's,
Unlike
yeah.
us, they tell us and we remember. You say, but the generation of today, they want to do it and then learn from it.
I don't think that's just a today thing. Again, when you're in a certain period of life, you think kids today. It's always been kids today. Because kids are foolish. Now, what happens is when the old people become foolish and they refuse to do their job. We've had a lot of parents and teachers and everything else saying, well, the child is innately wise. They've got to find out for themselves. No, you offer them the wisdom. Sometimes the idiot's going to have to learn for himself. You're going to find out. Solomon's going to say that. A fool will learn by no other, basically. That's been going on for a long time. I mean, how old is this text? Then the other hand is, but at least a good man, somebody who loves the person, is like, here's the wisdom, don't do this. And sometimes the wise youth will listen. The foolish youth won't.
So it's like, this is poison, don't take it.
Yeah, this is poison, don't.
Take a little.
Can I take a little? Right, and that has been going on for a long time. If Solomon's to be the way he's talking, this sort of thing was happening in his day. And it was, because it was a kingdom with newfound prosperity. Most helpful insight, I think it was Mark Horton said, is this was a new generation experiencing prosperity. You think of America's history, right? This is actually what you're living in. The baby boomers are the ones that experienced post-war prosperity. All the competition was bombed out of existence. And so there's this huge boom in prosperity. Everybody left the farm and the harsh realities of it and lived in an artificial sort of thing. And it's not necessarily bad, but it's deceptive. And a lot of people got deceived. Yes?
The parenting practices have changed.
Oh, you think about Spock, you think about Freud, it's just idiocy all the way down, sorry. But it's just, and Rousseau, right, the child is, you're going to pollute the child by enforcing something outside them. It's all here. And in fact, I know that's probably going to be in Carl Trueman's new book, right? The history. Carl Trueman, the church historian, did a book on the self in the modern age. We still don't know what the self is, but we're certainly tripped up by it. Anyway, another lecture for another day. Starting in verse 7, we see the characteristics of the wise versus the foolish. How do wise people act and react? Teachable spirit. Correction comes there. They love you. Right? Who becomes my trusted friends? The ones that tell me what I don't want to hear, but what I need to hear. They are for me. Right? And they're a good guy, and I want them in my life. They're the ones that, argue with me, so you idiot, you walk out right, not always hurting your feelings, but the one who will tell you the hard truth. Same thing with your parents will often have to do this, but if you can voluntarily surround yourself with people that will help, who love you enough to do that and have enough wisdom of their own with their perspective, it's a wonderful blessing. What are they on the hunt for? What's a wise man on the hunt for?
Wisdom.
More wisdom. That's what they want. How is this an exercise of ability? We already talked about it, right? The prideful person won't take correction. I'm right, always right, I'm born right. Again, note how God and our relationship with Him plays into this, right? Humility is so fundamental to the fear of the Lord. But I'll leave it at that. I always appreciated when I went to Patrick Henry and the seminary, the teachable spirit of the teachers.
They would learn from you?
No, from each other often. You're 20 years old, you're 18 years old, you don't have a ton. They'll listen to you, they're compassionate, but you don't know much. It's how they're saying, I'm learning this. And they would sometimes be a spiritual nature, sometimes it would be of an academic nature, because that was their vocation, and they're helping you with that vocation. And I was just a wonderful thing to model, and then if the students that I considered wiser would imitate them, and they'd argue through things and think through things, that was some of their gifts of vocation, so they're patient. They wouldn't lose their temper with each other if they were proved wrong. That doesn't come naturally. But a child, a young person, can if they're led to the water and drink it, you have to lead them to water. The water they're leading us to was a teachable spirit that accepts correction and just won't take on to opinion and go down with the ship with a false opinion. They are willing to be corrected. You see people. Who are the people most anxious and tyrannical? The ones who lack confidence in what they believe. They're the ones that just want to shut it down, whether it's right or left. Because they're timid, they're worried, they're anxious. They aren't really solid. And the ones that are very calm and patient and it will readily accept correction, but also aren't manipulated one way or the other, are the ones that have humility. To say, well, my whole brand isn't based off of being right all the time. If I'm already right all the time, I have nothing to learn. And then if anything threatens that, through propaganda techniques, power plays, whatever, I have to shut them down. Because I feel so threatened. Because apparently reality isn't on your side. It's a little universe you've created and you enforce by your will and by violence. What's going on? What's going on around us? People don't think reality is discernible. And they refuse to abide by reality. Yes, ma'am, Sarah.
Did you say that's the fault of the Pharisees, as they weren't teachable?
Well, yeah, I mean, and this fact, you can't just put the Pharisees in there. Scribes, Sanhedrin, Sadducees, they won't repent. Instead, it's like, we'll do to fix the problem, kill the guy that's correcting us. Jesus is the second Solomon. It's interesting to consider in light of that. These are the fools. These people that won't say, you know what, I surrender. Right? You're right. They won't do that. Instead, it's like, how do we shut him up and kill him? And then that's when the Psalms come into play, right? The innocent man be leaguered by the wicked. What is that? How many Psalms are about that? Anyway.
That's what we do. There's in the Word, knowing God, more about God, His character, and being in His Word.
Right. Well, did you notice, we already tied New Testament with Psalms with Proverbs? Because that's how the Bible works. And I hope you always are seeing the connections. This is what I'll finish. The last passage here. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself, but if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. What is that saying? What I think that's saying is, we bear the responsibility for our actions, whether they be wise or not. So if you are wise, you will reap the blessings and rewards. If you are foolish, you will reap the cursings and difficulties that you have inflicted upon yourself. We're laying aside the fact that the world is full of changes and chances and unjust men preying upon, well, we've already kind of mentioned that, but in terms of not being your own worst enemy. Verses 13 through 18, I think we can finish that in five minutes. Let's talk about Lady Folly. She has hospitality too. I put in scare quotes. What is she like? Let's look at verses 13 through 18.
The woman Folly is loud. She is seductive and knows nothing.
She sits at the door of her house. She takes a seat on the highest places of the town, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depth of Sheol.
All right. Lady Folly. Loud, stupid, and easy. Offering herself. It's the seduction that's like she's very clearly just offering herself right away. Not even like any of the fun back and forth of actual romance. There's kind of a that's the fun part, in terms of a marriage or whatever. The back and forth, the kind of the dance of matrimony. No, it's just here I am, right? Let's fool around, and it's loud and it's brazen and stupid. And that's who she wants. She wants stupid people. Note where her house is. Near the highest places. What does that say? Good. There's idolatry as the high places. But also, think in terms...
Very apparent, very evident.
When you think of the top of the town, when you think of... Actually, Covington is literally like this. There are two wealthier, everybody goes to the same school, but wealthier neighborhoods. One's on the top of Town Hill, one's across from the mill, where the mill manager lives. But the one on top of the hill, with some of the newer money, some of the older money, literally on the top, the place of privilege and power.
The elites.
The elites.
To look down on others.
In a sense, it shouldn't be, because kings do need to be at the top. They do make the call, and it should be for justice. You have the highest court in the land. We pray and long for and honor the highest court when it dispenses justice. And that's its responsibility, right? And we're not saying, well, you should be kicked down a few notches. No, it's the understanding that you should be just and righteous and wise. So high places will always exist. Hierarchy will always exist, because God exists. Hierarchy is, God's at the high above all. Now, what am I saying? Elite circles, places of power and wealth, in high places, in places of power and wealth, folly is loitering, waiting to ensnare princes and young men of promise. You all have lived enough life to have seen a young man full of promise waste his life because he's pursued folly. He even might have run into folly as he was entering the next chapter of his life of promise. You meet young people going into DC, ambitious, type A, really want to make something of their life, and what's there? They can easily be drawn away into folly and corruption, the party line, the lifestyle that of excess, all of that, the swamp. This Town. Anybody read that book, This Town? It's kind of depressing. And that's interesting. In these circles, in these circles of power and prosperity, that's where folly likes to loiter around, and it brings misery on the whole nation. Does that make sense? I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we see it all around us, and I think Solomon saw it in his own day.
You just summarized.
Right. That's what I want you to see. Is it's actually very calming. I'm upset. It's upsetting the state we're in. On the other hand, it's calming to know it's not a completely new situation. There is pain and suffering involved, but it's not the first time we've been to this rodeo. And Solomon invites the young man to not, as you enter these places, Prince, son of the king, you got to know she's loitering around. You need to avoid her. Get away from her. Don't be around foolish people. Don't listen to foolish advice. So are you going to embrace folly or get wisdom? Note the same refrain. Lady Wisdom said, whoever is simple, come here. Take of my meal. And Lady Folly says, whoever's simple, come here. But she's going to eat you. You're on the menu, so to speak. Yeah.
You have to pass by folly to get wisdom calls from the high place.
Yes.
Folly calls nearby.
Ooh.
You have to get
I missed that, but you're right.
by folly to get to wisdom.
She crieth upon the highest places of the city. She's there. Folly is nearby, and you'll often pass by her. We have like a favorite restaurant we do at the beach we keep going to over and over again. And we're going to go to that one. Right? They have the best scallops, whatever. Right? That's the place. But if you pass by, you'll see all these others hawking their wares, trying to advertise you with their bright signs or big fiberglass sharks or, whatever deal. It's like that with Memphis. You go by, you want to find a barbecue place. Everybody has their trophies in the window, crossed arms saying, we're the best, and everybody's saying they're the best. Who really is, right? You need to go past them to get to the real thing. Does that make sense? It's the same thing with folly. She's nearby. You have to pass her on the way. She's calling. And guess what? Both are seeking the same customer. The simple. You start out simple. You start out simple. So whose invitation are you going to accept? Whose dwelling? Whose habitation? Whose house are you going to enter? Folly or wisdom? Isn't that's a compelling picture that Solomon's laid out for us. The selling line for Lady Folly, right? Whoever's simple gets stolen water and bread in secret, so shameful, thieving, adulterous, right? That especially stolen water is often a very common Old Testament metaphor for adultery. Not a long life or life, not nourishment, not responsibility or just deserts, and not even a commentary on character, where whoever comes into here will be wise. That's everything. Lady Wisdom offered life, you'll live, long life even, nourishment, conviviality, responsibility, or just desserts in the conviviality, and the understanding of your character. You'll be wise. No, Lady Folly, her advertisement is sin is fun.
Don't you dare snake.
Yes, the serpent is here. Sin is fun. And then what's the destination? Death and hell. The grave, Sheol. Right? Heed wisdom and live. If you don't, simple man, you're going to go in the other house and you will die. Any questions? This ends Solomon's discourse to his son, and we're going to start next chapter. It will be just Proverbs. The Proverbs of Solomon will finally start. We don't often enough think about Proverbs in its proper structure. It's not just the wisdom sayings. We've gone through this 9 chapters of a charge to his son, this young man. Wonderful book. Any questions or thoughts before we head out? All right. Father, we thank you for your word, and we thank you for your wisdom. We ask that you give it to us, and we would be eager to hear it and apply it. In Christ's name, amen.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
So you're thinking,